Okay, so think about this for a second. What happens like after that last breath? Like one moment you're here and then the next, well, where are you? I mean, does the light just go out or is there something more going on? Something beyond like what we can really even wrap our heads around?
Well, those are some pretty fundamental questions, and those are really at the heart of our deep dive today. We're going to kind of plunge into this really intricate and often surprising wisdom of the Bardo Thodol. You might know it better as the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Yeah, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that has a certain ring to it, doesn't it? It's almost like, like a forbidden text or something like that. But as we're going to discover today, it's way more than just a simple guide to, death and dying. It's really more like a really detailed itinerary, like a step-by-step guide, almost a navigation system for this journey that starts like the second our physical life just, ends.
Yeah, that's a really great way to think about it, and by exploring this text we can get a better picture of what it really means to be alive.
Exactly, yeah. And the brains behind this whole thing is this legendary Padmasambhava, right? He was a pivotal figure. There's the guy that brought Buddhism to Tibet back in the 8th century.
He was a real pioneer.
Oh yeah, it's a total mystic pioneer, right? And he's still revered in Tibet as Guru Rinpoche or the Precious Master.
That's right.
So this Padmasambhava, this wasn't just like your average spiritual teacher, right? I mean, we're talking about someone with huge spiritual mastery and incredibly like yogic abilities and a deep well of just esoteric knowledge.
Exactly, yeah. And the Bardo Thodol, it wasn't written out of some like intellectual curiosity. This stemmed from Padmasambhava's really deep compassion and his desire to guide both the living and the dead towards liberation, even in that post-death state.
So it's not just about comforting those who are, still here. It's an active guide for the soul, like as it's in this transition.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So tell me a little more about Padmasambhava himself. I mean, his story sounds pretty remarkable.
It is, yeah. Even from when he was really young, he was recognized as a Mahasiddha.
What is that?
So that's someone who has reached like a very high level of spiritual realization, and they often have these exceptional abilities.
Oh, wow. So like superpowers.
Yeah, you can think of it like that, someone who has mastered their inner world, which gives a lot of weight to the teachings in the Bardo Thodol.
Right, so not your typical childhood then.
Yeah.
And then he gets invited to Tibet, right, by King Trisong Detsen.
That's right.
What was the mission there?
So the king, he wanted to solidify Buddhism in Tibet and really create spiritual unity throughout the country. But at that time, Tibet was a mix of shamanistic traditions and animistic beliefs, and the indigenous Bon religion was really influential.
So it sounds like it was a pretty diverse spiritual landscape.
It was. Yeah, it really was.
So introducing a new spiritual framework like that sounds like a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah, it was. And Padmasambhava actually got a lot of resistance from the local deities and spirits that were part of these Bon traditions.
I bet.
But here's where it gets really interesting. He didn't just try to overpower them. Instead, he really skillfully integrated some of these Bon traditions into Tibetan Buddhism. It was really like spiritual diplomacy.
Wow, that's fascinating. So like if you can't beat them, join them kind of approach to spirituality.
Yeah, exactly. And that integration was crucial for establishing a really strong spiritual foundation. It led to the creation of Semye, which was the very first Buddhist monastery in Tibet, and the start of teaching about the nature of mind, the nature of reality, and this cycle of existence called samsara.
Samsara.
Yeah, think of it as like an endless loop of birth, death, and rebirth that's driven by our attachments and aversions. And, that's really what the Bardo Thodol is trying to help us break free from.
Okay, so we've got this legendary figure, we've got a complex spiritual background, and we've got the beginnings of this guide for what happens to us after we die. But I mean, what is it about Tibetan Buddhism that makes a Book of the Dead even make sense?
Well, the core belief is that death isn't the end. It's seen as a transitional phase, like a pause between experiences. And it's actually seen as a time with a huge potential for spiritual liberation.
Because you're free from the limits of the physical body, so your mind is more unfiltered.
Exactly.
So it's more receptive to these deeper truths.
Padmasambhava, he knew that at death, the mind is free from the physical senses and becomes uniquely open to this ultimate reality. And it's a really valuable opportunity for liberation, but the problem is most people are, understandably overwhelmed with fear and illusions about death.
Right.
So they miss this opportunity.
So that's where the Bardo Thodol comes in, right? It's like this cosmic guidebook to help us navigate this in-between state.
Exactly. That was his intention, was to create this guide that could be either recited for someone who is dying or even studied throughout life so that the mind gets familiar with the bardos, these states that follow death. And the goal is to reduce suffering and even when everything is dissolving, to open up paths to enlightenment.
And it sounds like even if you haven't, achieved enlightenment during your life, the Bardo Thodol offers a way out.
You could say that. Padmasambhava gave specific instructions to help people recognize what he called the clear light at death. Even if you haven't reached full enlightenment while you're alive, recognizing this light is still a big opportunity.
So let's dig into this clear light concept and the journey that unfolds. I know you mentioned these three main bardos, or these transitional states that the soul goes through. So what is that first stage on this post-mortem adventure?
So the first one is called the Chikhai Bardo, and that's the Bardo of the moment of death. This is that first transition where the body starts to break down and your consciousness begins to separate from your physical form.
It sounds like a pretty major change. So what do you actually experience in this Chikhai Bardo?
Well, once that separation happens, the consciousness, I don't really know a better way to put it, runs into the primordial clear light.
The primordial clear light.
Yeah, the Bardo Thodol describes this as a light that is radiant and pure and just vast. Imagine a moment of total clarity before any thoughts or judgments come up, just pure awareness. That's kind of what the clear light represents.
That sounds almost too much to really even grasp.
Yeah, it is. This clear light is understood to be like the very essence of the absolute nature of the mind. A state of pure awareness with no conditions.
Yeah.
No duality, no fear, no clinging to anything. You could call it the higher self or fundamental consciousness, but the important thing to understand here is that this light isn't something outside of you. It's the true essence of your own consciousness. And realizing that you are the light, that's the key to instant liberation.
So that's like winning the spiritual lottery right out of the gate.
If you're spiritually prepared, yeah, absolutely. The Chikhai Bardo has the potential for immediate liberation for nirvana. If you can recognize that this clear light is your own true nature, it's instant liberation. There's no need to go through any more stages.
Boom. Instant enlightenment. No coming back to this whole cycle of rebirth.
Exactly. And this recognition isn't about intellectually understanding it or reciting prayers. It's a direct experience of truth where the mind sees its own nature without anything blocking it. All those patterns you've built up your karma, the illusion of being a separate self, it all just vanishes.
But what if you're not, spiritually prepared? Like if you haven't spent your life thinking about the nature of consciousness, what happens then?
Well, then things can get a little bit more complicated. For those who aren't ready, that incredible brightness of the clear light can be too much. It can even be scary. And instead of seeing it as their true nature, their mind sees it as a threat, maybe because of deep-seated fear or just because they're holding on to the familiar feeling of being alive in a physical body.
So it's kind of like going from a really dark room into the blazing sunshine.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And if that happens, the consciousness pulls back, it hides and misses that chance for liberation. And then it moves into the next bardos, where the experiences become more distorted and, as the text says, influenced by their karma.
Okay, so you've missed that first exit. Where do you end up next?
The next stage is the Chonyid Bardo, which is also called the Bardo of experiencing reality, or the Bardo of Visions. This is where things get kind of psychedelic.
Visions, huh? What are we talking about here?
Think about Carl Jung's idea that gods and demons are just projections from our unconscious mind. In the Chonyid Bardo, the consciousness is totally detached from the physical body, and it exists in a dimension without any real boundaries. And there, it experiences these emanations of its own mind directly.
So all those desires that you've been hiding, your fears, everything inside of us, it all comes out in this state.
That's it. The Bardo Thodol says that everything that's been suppressed or desired or feared comes out in this really intense way. And these visions appear in two main forms: peaceful visions and wrathful visions.
Peaceful sounds a lot better. What are those like?
They're the first ones you see. Yeah, you might see these serene deities like Buddhas, bodhisattvas, beings of light, and they represent the enlightened good aspects of your own consciousness. And they radiate those good qualities that you might have cultivated during your life.
It sounds pretty nice. What's the problem?
Well, even these peaceful visions can be too much for someone who's not ready. They might not believe that they're real, or they might feel like they don't deserve them, and so they shy away from the experience. It's like being offered pure love, but you don't know how to accept it.
So even the good experiences can be a roadblock.
Yeah, and if you don't recognize those peaceful visions for what they are, which is parts of yourself, then the experience changes. The Bardo Thodol says that's when the wrathful deities show up.
Wrathful, that doesn't sound so good. So we're talking like fiery demons and stuff.
Think more like monstrous, scary forms. They embody anger, fear, all those repressed desires, those untamed parts of your mind. And this is really important to understand. These wrathful deities aren't some evil beings from outside. They're, again, expressions of your own mind. They're reflections of those passions and attachments that are holding you back. It's like holding up a mirror to your own inner turmoil, but it's magnified to this cosmic level.
Wow, so this Chonyid Bardo, it's like your own personal movie, but projected out on this huge cosmic screen.
That's a good way to put it. It's pure psychic manifestation. Your mind is free from the limits of your body, and so its energy is unfiltered and really strong. These visions are like dreams, but super vivid, almost tangible and really clear because all that repressed stuff is out in the open.
And these visions that sound pretty terrifying, they're still seen as opportunities for enlightenment. That seems a little counterintuitive.
The key is to recognize what's happening. Each vision, whether it's peaceful or wrathful, shows a part of yourself that you need to either integrate or let go of. If you can stay aware and realize that everything you're seeing is created by your own mind, then the fear fades away and you can actually become liberated. The Bardo Thodol keeps saying, this isn't real, it's all in your head, don't freak out.
So the message is, don't panic. It's just you.
That's the idea. The advice throughout this whole Bardo is to keep your focus on that clear light we talked about. That's the essence of your mind, the constant light behind all those mental projections. If you can recognize it, that's your path to liberation.
But that still sounds incredibly hard to do when you're surrounded by what feel like your deepest fears and desires, but supersized.
Oh, absolutely. The Bardo Thodol makes it clear that for most people, these visions feel totally real. It takes serious spiritual work during life to be able to detach from illusions and to really think about the nature of mind so that you can stay focused on the clear light in such an intense situation. It's not something you can just learn overnight.
So you really got to practice this stuff throughout your life.
Exactly. Fear and attachment, those are the main things that stop you from reaching liberation in this Bardo. Fear of the intense visions, especially the wrathful ones, and being attached to the peaceful ones, those are the things that keep you trapped in this cycle of samsara, the cycle of rebirth. You can even become attached to the good experiences, and that stops you from seeing that all these things are ultimately empty.
So you can get stuck on the good stuff, too.
Yeah, you can. The goal is to see beyond all of it, good and bad, and recognize their emptiness, what's called shunyata in Tibetan Buddhism. It's like the empty canvas that all these visions are painted on the basic potential of the mind. If you can remember this idea of emptiness during the Chonyid Bardo, you can see all the visions without clinging to them and just understand that they're temporary expressions of your own nature.
So this Bardo of Visions, it's like a giant cosmic therapy session where you have to face all your inner demons literally, and you have the potential for healing and freedom.
That's a really good way to put it. It's a time of intense revelation, a real test where you confront your own mind, and it shows who's ready for liberation and who needs more time in the cycle of rebirth.
Okay, so we've gone through the initial shock of death and this crazy world of our own projections. So what's the last stage in this Bardo trilogy?
The final stage is the Sidpa Bardo, the Bardo of becoming, or the Bardo of rebirth. This is where you face the consequences of everything you've been through so far, and you feel a strong pull towards your next physical form.
So this is where all that karma comes into play. All those actions and intentions from our lives. This is where it all gets added up, right?
That's right. The whole journey leads to this point. What you carry inside those fears, you haven't let go of the things you're still attached to. All of that determines where you go next. After going through the dissolution in the Chikhai Bardo and facing your projections in the Chonyid Bardo, you enter a state of greater psychic density, almost like all that energy is becoming more solid.
Greater density. But I thought you were this like free-floating consciousness.
You are. But then that density increases, and with it comes this intense longing for rebirth that's fueled by all those unresolved fears and attachments. And this desire is what pushes you to find a new body, a new way to exist. It's like this instinct to have a self again.
So it's like that instinct kicks in again, that urge to be real in a physical way.
Yeah, it's something like that. In the Sidpa Bardo, your consciousness is really influenced by karmic imprints. Those are the traces left by your actions and thoughts from past lives. And they act like magnets, pulling you towards situations and experiences that match your inner state. If you're carrying a lot of fear, you might be drawn to a rebirth where you'll experience more fear. All those unresolved desires and strong emotions, they create this energy that shapes your next life.
So what kind of visions do you see in this Bardo of rebirth?
Well, the Visions here are often about conception. You often see couples together, which represents creating a new life. The Bardo Thodol says there's this inner call to choose a new body, but it's not a conscious choice like we make when we're awake. It's more like this unconscious attraction guided by your deep-seated emotions and your karma. It's not like you're browsing through a catalog of potential lives.
So it's less of a choice and more like you're drawn to it.
Exactly. The Bardo Thodol actually advises staying detached and clear when you see these images so you don't just blindly end up in a bad rebirth. If you can stay calm, the Sidpa Bardo gives you one last chance to transcend this whole cycle of possibility of not being reborn and finally achieving liberation. That's the ultimate goal for spiritual practitioners, to see these visions for what they're fleeting expressions of their own empty mind and not get caught up in the illusion of a new solid identity.
Wow, that sounds like true freedom.
It is. But the text also says that for a lot of people, there's this huge pull towards getting a new physical body. It's like a psychic storm, an urge to exist again, maybe because we're afraid of not existing. And the way you choose a body isn't random. It's connected to the state of your consciousness, reflecting what you need to learn or resolve in your spiritual journey. Sadly, a lot of people miss this chance and end up reborn into difficult situations, which just keeps the cycle of suffering going. So you get another chance, but it might not be the chance you were hoping for.
So how can we even start to get ready for this final stage while we're, still alive?
The Bardo Thodol says it's crucial to think about our desires and fears while we're living. If we can become more aware of what's driving us, we can start to loosen their hold on us. Things like meditation and thinking about the fact that we're all going to die are seen as really important for developing detachment. They can help your mind stay free from all the drama that comes up in the Sidpa Bardo. So basically, the way you live really shapes how you die and what happens after.
So it all comes back around. How you deal with your inner world now affects your journey through these in-between states.
Absolutely. The Sidpa Bardo shows us that life and death are connected. This cycle of rebirth, it's not some random thing. It's a reflection of our choices and perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
If we can let go of our attachments, we break free from that cycle and reach enlightenment, which is a state beyond rebirth, beyond the illusion of having a fixed self.
That's a really amazing way to look at things. This whole journey is laid out in such detail. So what would you say is the main message of the Bardo Thodol for people like us who are, living our everyday lives?
The Bardo Thodol, it's not just some old religious text or a bunch of weird beliefs. It's a powerful tool for getting to know yourself. It's like a mirror showing you the landscape of your mind and a map of where you might be headed. It challenges how we usually think about death as the end and shows us that it's actually a doorway to new possibilities. It makes you really consider what Ram Dass said. When you die, there is only one question that matters: how much did you love? These teachings really help us prepare for that final moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Tibetan Book of the Dead, it makes us really look at our own lives. Are we really ready for that final transition? Are we willing to let go of who we think we are, the things we own, even our beliefs? It's a pretty intense thing to think about. It makes you realize how much we hold on to.
It does, but maybe by thinking about these teachings, we can not only get ready for what's next, but also learn to live in a more meaningful way right now.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Bardo Thodol, we're left with some pretty profound questions. What parts of this journey really resonated with you? How does it change how you think about life and death and everything in between? This is definitely something to keep thinking about long after we're done here.